Thank you very much, Professor Kim, for this invitation. I enjoy to be in Korea. That's my first visit, and that's a very pleasant and interesting visit because I have a very nice guest, who is Professor Kim. So I will speak about spatial balanced sampling, state of the art. So that's a problem of survey sampling. The problem is to see a little bit how to select points in a space. What's the best strategy in function of what we can have as an intuition of the model. That's a table of contents. So I have first an introduction. Next, the word representative. I don't like this word. So for me, never use the word representative when you are doing sampling because that's very badly defined. The next point is that a sample can be at the same time balanced and random, in the sense that we can select a sample with the same mean as in the population, and the sample can be random. And next, the problem will be a problem of autocorrelation. So there is, when we do a measurement in a space, generally two points that are very close to each other are similar. And so if we do two measurements that are very close to each other, we have less information in the sample. So for this reason, we can feel directly that we have a big interest of spreading the sample in the space. I will speak about methods in one dimension, and next to see how we can generalize in two dimensions, and next give idea for having an algorithm for spreading at the same time for a spread and balanced sampling to go to the conclusion. That's the main notation. Do you are familiar with notation in survey sampling? So that's in the paper that we have written with my last PhD student, Mathieu Wilhelm. So that's a notation. We have a population. The size of the population is capital N, and a sample is a subset of the population. So that's the main idea of sampling. A sample is a subset of the population, and we can have two different notations for the sample, like a subset, for instance, I select unit 2, 3, and 5 in the population, and so the sample is a subset. And I can use also a notation as a vector that takes 0 or 1 if the unit is or not in the sample. And with the notation of the vector, I can even put a 2 if I have a sampling with replacement. That's the number of times the unit is selected in the sample. A sampling design is not related to the selection of each unit. A sampling design is something that is related to the selection of each sample. It means that at each possible sample, each possible subset, we assign a probability of selecting the sample. And so that is called the sampling design. So I have a probability for each possible samples. I have 2 power capital N samples, possible subset of the population. And that's the sampling design. And so next I say that I have a random sample, capital S, that is a random variable that takes as value, possible values are the sample, the subset of the population. And from the sampling design, I can derive what is called the inclusion probability. The inclusion probability is the probability of selecting one particular unit. To have the inclusion probability, I have to compute the probability that unit K is in the sample. And to derive the inclusion probability, I have to do the sum of the probability for all the samples that contain unit K. And I have the probability of selecting unit K. And also I can compute the joint inclusion probability. That's the probability of selecting together two different units, K and L. And to compute the joint inclusion probability, I have to do the sum of the probabilities of selecting the sample, all the samples that contain unit K and L together. So that's the joint inclusion probability. And the aim is to estimate the total Y. That's the total on the population. So in design-based inference, Y is not random. The population is not random. The only sources of randomness is the way of selecting the sample. And so the inference is done in function of the sampling design. The total of the population is not random. That's the mean of the population that's not random. And the aim can be to estimate the total of the population of the mean of the population. So to estimate the mean of the population, so you see that here I have a sum on the population. I can use the famous Narin or Witts-Thomson estimator. You see that here I have a sum on the sample, so that's the unit that are the values that are measured only on the units that are in the sample, and I divide by the inclusion probabilities, and here I divide it by capital N. Capital N is the size of the population, not the size of the sample. And this estimator is unbiased if and only if all the first order inclusion probabilities are different from 0. So I have an unbiased estimator that in general is not very good, but that's the basic estimator. And it is possible to compute the variance of this estimator. So the only sources of randomness is here in my estimator is the capital S here. The capital S here that is in the bottom. Yk is not random, πk is not random, capital S is random, and I can compute the variance of the estimator. And if the sample has a fixed sample size, I can compute another variance. There is a simplification of the variance where the delta KL that is here, in fact, is the variance or a general term of the variance covariance matrix of the indicator variables of the presence of the unit in the sample, delta KL. So matrix delta is a variance covariance matrix. So on the diagonal, that's a variance of a Bernoulli distribution, and extra diagonal I have the joint inclusion probabilities minus the product of the first order inclusion probability. Is it clear? Do you have questions? So that's survey sampling theory in 2 slides. Do you have questions? No? Okay, next, the first point here is that there is no particular reason to select the units with equal inclusion probabilities. So that's a very important point in survey sampling. So because many people think that the sample must be representative. So that the proportion must be the same in each category of the population and each category of the sample. And that's not true. In a lot of cases, we have interest of oversampling some categories of the population. So that's the first idea. So survey sampling theory is not witchcraft. That's scientific. So if you are a witchcraft, if you do not like your boss, I am the boss of my team, you can make a small doll with his effigy, and next you push needles. And you are making pain to your boss, because the argument is because the doll looks like your boss. That's the justification. And a lot of people believe that if the sample looks like the population, it should work. But that's not true. That's a completely false argument. The scientific argument is the computation of the bias, the expectation, and the variance. So that's not a problem of representativeness. So one can select units with unequal inclusion probabilities, and representativeness means that the sample is a reduced model of the population, and that's not a scientific argument, that's an argument for witchcraft. That's not an argument to justify estimation. Representativeness is only an argument to justify witchcraft. And the basic example in the theory of survey sampling is stratification. You have a population, and the population is cut into non-overlapping categories that are called strata. So that's, and in each category we select simple random sampling without replacement with fixed sample size. And next the problem is how to choose the sample size in each category. And there is the famous argument of Jerzy Neyman, who defined the optimal stratification. That's a very important person in the theory of survey sampling. And Jerzy Neyman showed that, in fact, we have interest of oversampling where the variance is large. And so that's very used, for instance, in business sampling. You oversample in the categories of the big companies. So in public statistics, that's a very usual way of doing. We oversample, and even the very big companies, and I know that in Korea you have very big companies, they are always selected in the sample. Generally, that's the methodology to do business survey. And next you weight by the inverse of the inclusion probabilities to have an unbiased estimator. So each unit must be weighted like that by the Hurwitz-Thompson estimator. Here you divide by the inclusion probability. So you weight by the inverse of the inclusion probability to get an unbiased estimator. It means that the weight is larger if your inclusion probability is very small. It means that if your inclusion probability is very small, you represent a large number of companies, for instance. So, and next you can generalize the result of Neyman, Jerzy Neyman, that is called optimal stratification, and we can use unequal probability sampling. And so my advice is never use the word representative. You can have a problem of coverage. Coverage means that some units are never selected in the sample. That means that we have null inclusion probabilities. And if we have null inclusion probabilities, it means that it's impossible to estimate unbiasedly the mean or the total. Second point, balancing. A sample can be at the same time balanced and random. So we suppose that we have a register. In a lot of European countries, we have a population register. So there is a list of all the people of the population in Belgium, 11 million of people. And so you have the date of birth and the place of living, the place of birth, and some information like that. And it is possible to select a sample in such a way that the mean in the sample for the auxiliary variables that are known at the level of the population is equal to the population means. So that's the idea of balanced sampling. We select a sample in such a way that for the variable I know in my register, the means are equal in the sample, in the population. And we can do that without with unequal inclusion probability. In this case, the Hurwitz-Thompson estimator, that's the estimator using the inverse of the inclusion probabilities computed on the sample, is equal to the true population total. There are several ways of doing. So you see a little bit the idea. So that's balanced sampling. That's a game, Bamboleo. You have to put coins over there. And the loser is the person who will provoke a completely disequilibrium. So that's balanced sampling in 2 dimensions. You select units and it must be balanced like that. So that's really that. One possibility is to use a rejective procedure. Rejective procedure is that you select a sample, and if the sample is not balanced, you reject it, you throw it, and you select another, till you have a sample that is balanced enough. So that's called rejective procedure for balanced sampling. So in fact, that's rejecting the sample is conditioning in probability, so that the probability, the sampling design of a sample, and next So that's the value between the estimator and the true value, and we divide by the true value, that is general positive. We take the absolute value, and we would like to have the sum for all the auxiliary variables that is lower than a small constant. And then we do that. Maybe we generate 10,000 samples, and at the end we select a sample that is balanced. That is not so good, in fact. I do not like this method. Because if you use rejective sampling, in fact, you change the inclusion probabilities. And it is possible to show by simulation that by rejective sampling, you have less chance to select the extreme units of the population. They have less chance to belong to the sample. So if, for instance, at the beginning you have equal inclusion probabilities, at the end you have lower probability at the end. And next, if you do an estimation of the variance, you underestimate, because you don't have the extreme values in your sample. You have less. So that's a method that is, you can see that in this publication, they did simulation. With my colleague Jean-Claude Deville, I developed the cube method. That is a method that selects a balanced sample. Automatically, there is an error function in the package we did that is called sampling, in such a way that the sample is balanced like that. So the estimator of the total is almost equal to the true total. And that's a method that contains two phases that is called the flight phase and the landing phase. And that's the reason is because it's not possible to have a sample that is exactly balanced, because there is a small rounding problem, because the selection of a sample is an integer number problem. You take or not take the unit, and you cannot have a strict equality. So you can have something that is almost equal. And during the first phase, that's working with the exact equality, and during the landing phase we fix the rounding problem. And I will try you to give the idea of the algorithm, why it is called the cube method. So here I have only one constraint. I would like to select a sample of fixed sample size, but that's a particular case of balanced sampling. So the fixed sample size is a balancing constraint, so you have one variable. So that's the cube. In a population of size 3, I have 2 power 3 possible samples, 8 samples, and each vertex of the cube is a sample. That's the empty sample. Here I select only unit 1, here I select only unit 2, here I select only unit 3. That are the 3 samples with unit 2 and 3. Yeah? And that's called the census. The census, the 3 units are selected. So you can imagine the problem of sampling like that. In fact, the problem of sampling consists of assigning a probability to each vertex of a cube in such a way that when you compute the mean of all the vertices weighted by the probability of selecting the vertices, you get the vector of inclusion probabilities you aim to obtain with your algorithm. Okay? Next, you have a constraint, the constraint of balancing. The constraint of balancing is a subspace. A subspace, this is this triangle, a subspace that crosses the cube. If you have balancing constraint variables, you can define a subspace that crosses the cube, and you can show that the vector of inclusion probability is in the cube and in the subspace. And so the idea of the algorithm is with this representation of the cube. So there are steps, and you see at the first step, I choose a direction, this one. This direction can be chosen randomly or not. There are possibility of variance. But this direction must remain in the subspace of constraint. So that's the only constraint for this direction. So you follow this direction, and at the moment you will cross a face. And you are interested in this point. You see? And next you take the opposite direction, and again you will cross the face, and you are interested in this point. And at the first step, you will choose randomly between this point and this point by assigning probability to these 2 points in such a way that in average you remain here. You see? I will choose this one or this one, and I will put the probability over there and over there in such a way that I remain in average over there. And that's the basic step of the cube method. And if I am going to a face of the cube, that means that I will transform my vector of inclusion probability, and I will introduce a value that is a 1 or a 0. I will take a decision for 1 unit to take it or to reject it definitively. And next one, if I have chosen this one, I must remain stuck on the face. So I am on this face, I am stuck on the face. It remains only one opposite direction, one authorized direction. I can go in this way or in this way, and again I will choose between these 2 points in such a way that in average I remain over there. Yeah. So that's the idea. So that's a random process that begins at the inclusion probabilities and that respect the constraint. So that's only linear algebra in the algorithm, and that's working. There is an example of the Swiss canton of Ticino. I have several variables here. Population, the area, number of men, women, population of classes of ages, number of households. And that's the canton of Ticino. That's very nice because the people are speaking Italian. I like Italian. That's in the south of Switzerland, that's close to Italy. And I computed inclusion probabilities proportional to size, so I select municipalities with inclusion probabilities that are proportional to the number of inhabitants in the municipalities. And I have big municipalities with a probability 1. So that's the cities of the canton of Ticino. A sample size 500. The population size is about 300. And next, I have a table here. I have the true population total. That's my Hurwitz-Thompson estimator, and that's the error. You see the estimator minus the true value over the true value times 100. And that's the result. So I selected a sample. So that's an example. So that's the population. And that's the estimator. You see, I get exactly the same value. That's the number of municipalities. That's the estimator. That's the area, the complete area of the canton, and that's the estimator by means of the municipality. So you see all is less than 1% of error. So that's very accurate. And so you can use, there is in the sampling package a function that is used sample cube. You just need your matrix of auxiliary variables and your vector of inclusion probability, and you can select a sample. Now, I have to speak about spatial sampling. It remains only 10 minutes. So now I will introduce a model. That's a model. And that's a linear model with autocorrelation here. I have autocorrelation and heteroscedasticity. So I have 2 sources of randomness, the sampling design and the model. And I compute what is called the anticipated variance. So there is a square missing here. That's the difference between the true value for the total, that's the estimator, and there is a square missing. And you have the 2 expectations under the sampling design and under the model. And if you compute that, you get that. There are 2 terms. The first one is depending only on x, and the second one is depending on the correlation, the autocorrelation, and on the inclusion probability, on the covariance between the indicator. You can put the first term to 0 if you select a sample that is balanced, not x. So you can remove the first term. And the second term, you can decrease the value if you take delta KL that are negative when the rho KL is large. So the ID is the indicator, must be negative, the indicator of the presence. So it means that you must have a repulsion where the correlation is large. So when the units are close to each other, in fact, because the correlation is large. So the sample must be spread. And if you continue, you can see what's the best value for the inclusion probabilities. The inclusion probabilities must be proportional to the standard deviation of the error term. So you have to oversample where the dispersion is larger. There are more information. So that's the best strategy if you believe in this linear model. And so the usual methods are in general systematic sampling like that. So that's very spread. Or you can do stratification like that. You do squares. And that's simple random sampling here. Simple random sampling is not good because you see that you have units that are very close to each other, big holes. But you cannot apply that if you have inequal inclusion probabilities. You can do systematic sampling if you have inequal inclusion probabilities. That cannot be generalized to that. Even stratification, that's with equal inclusion probabilities. So that's an example in Switzerland. So that the Swiss biodiversity monitoring, that's systematic sampling. There is oversampling here in the canton of Ticino and in the Jurassic Mountain, because that's very specific. The Jurassic Mountain is the north. You know Jurassic Park? That's for the Jurassic Mountain. And the Jurassic Mountain is in Switzerland, in the north of Switzerland. In the south you have the Alps. And that's where they found the first dinosaur. So systematic sampling can be generalized to unequal inclusion probabilities in one dimension, not in two. So I give you an example to show you how it works in one dimension. Suppose that we have this inclusion probability that are completely unequal. I have 6 units in my population, and here I have the VK that are the cumulated inclusion probabilities. And next I draw this line. So the sum of the inclusion probabilities is equal to the sample size. So I draw this line. So my sample size is 3. And each interval here corresponds to a unit. And the length of the interval is equal to the inclusion probability. So I generate a random number U, uniform between 0 and 1. This random number will fall in an interval here between 0 and 1. And I will take the unit in which the random number falls. You see? Generate a random number, uniform between 0 and 1. It falls in an interval, I select unit 3. Next I take U plus U, the same number, plus 1. No, that's this one. Excuse me, plus 1. It falls in another interval, and I select this unit. And next U plus 2, and I will select this unit. So that's generalization of unequal inclusion sampling, systematic sampling, but that's in one dimension. The unit are selected with unequal inclusion probability, and there are something that is systematic in the way of changing, and that's correct. Not respecting the inclusion probabilities. Another idea is the pivotal method. So the pivotal method is like this lift for boats. So that's a kind you can visit in Belgium, because I am working in Switzerland, but I am Belgian. And so there are boats like, there are basins for the boats, and that's working without any electricity. And the weight of the basin is the same with or without the boat, because the principle of Archimedes. And there is only a tap here, and you open the tap. So the people, and that's working like that. Oh, that's not working. Yes, that's working like that, and that's moving. So you see that's working, the source of energy that you put a little bit more water in the upper basin. So, and that's working without any other source of energy. So that's the pivotal method. That's a little bit an idea. You take 2 units and you change the value. So you have, for instance, this vector, and the first 2 units you will put 1, 2, 0, and the other one the sum of the 2 values. And you do here the contrary, and you select one of the 2 values randomly in such a way that you remain at the previous place. So that's a way of selecting a sample. And if the sum of the 2 units is larger than 1, you put 1 here and the rest over there, and here the rest and 1, and you select that randomly in such a way that you remain over there. And here there is an example. You repeat this operation. You have 0.3, 0.4, and you will here introduce a 0 randomly. That's the probability of going over there and there. And next you repeat, there is a battle between the first and the third unit. And if you continue the operation at the end, you get a sample. So the idea is that you change only 2 units randomly in order to introduce a 0 and a 1 in such a way that you respect the inclusion probabilities. And okay, the computation is not very complicated. And there are some possibilities. There is the ordered pivotal method. You take the first, battle with the second, and the remaining with the third, and so on. And you can choose the two values that are changing randomly. And there is also a very good idea that is called the local pivotal method to do spatial sampling. I will explain you that later. So now some examples. So that's Belgium. So that's the center of the municipalities. I would like to select a sample of municipalities that is spread. In blue you have Flanders. In green you have Brussels. There are 19 municipalities in Brussels, and in red you have Wallonia. And that's a complicated problem because the points are irregularly on the space, and moreover I would like to use unequal inclusion probabilities. Can I speak 5 minutes? 5, maybe? Yeah. Yeah?
I think we have enough time.
Yeah? Okay. So there is a very known method that is very used that is called generalized random tessellation sampling proposed by Steven and Olson. There are several papers about that. So I give you the idea. You have the points in the space, and you cut the space in 4. And again you cut each square in 4, and again and again and again and again, until you have maximum 1 point in each square. You see? You cut in 2, maximum 1 point in the square. Next, you use this fractal curve, like that. You pass the fractal, that's a quadrant recursive curve. And if you have this fractal curve, you can pass from 2 dimensions to 1 dimension. And next you can apply systematic sampling. So that's the idea. Moreover, they introduce some kinds of randomization in the problem, but so they randomize each square, like that, each square. It's at the beginning, and next they randomize. But in fact, if you pass in 1 dimension, 2 points that are close on the line in 1 dimension normally are close also in 2 dimensions. So you pass a fractal curve. So that's the idea of the generalized random tessellation sampling. So that's the most used method. A second method could be the use of traveling salesman problem. You know the problem? So there is a traveling salesman, and there are a lot of cities, and the aim is to cross into pass in all the cities by using the smallest path. And so there is no solution for this problem. That's a very complicated problem, but there are a lot of packages where you can find at least the local minimum. You are never sure to have the best solution, so that's a solution. And so from that you can pass from 2 dimension in 1 dimension, and you can apply systematic sampling, and you get a sample that is relatively spread. So that's an example, that's simple random sampling. I have a grid of 40 of 40 points, and here I pass the path of the traveling salesman problem, and I did systematic sampling. You see that's better spread. Next there is the local pivotal method. You remember the pivotal method when I used only 2 probabilities. So that's a very simple idea by Grafström, Lundström, and Schellin. So the idea is that you have all the points in your space, you take 2 units that are close to each other, and you apply the pivotal method. And one will increase and the other will be decreased, like that, randomly. And since you take at each step 2 units that are close to each other, you introduce a kind of repulsion in the problem. So that's very, very easy to apply. So you at each step you take 2 units that are very close, and you apply the basic step of the pivotal method. The small battle, one is winning, the other is losing. And you get something that's working very well. And next there is a generalization with the cube method, where you can have a sample that is at the same time balanced and well spread. So you can have a kind of extension of the local pivotal method and the cube method to have something to respect totals, and that is well spread. So that's an example. That the GRTS, generalized tessellation sampling, that's the local pivotal method, and that's the local cube method. You see that's well spread, but how to evaluate that? In order to evaluate the quality of the spreading, you can compute the Voronoi polygons for the units that are selected in the sample. So the Voronoi polygons is the area of all the points that are closer to a point than to all the other points. And so a sample is well spread if the area of the Voronoi polygons are more or less equal. So to evaluate the quality of the spreading, you can simply compute the variance of the area of the Voronoi polygons. That's a very simple idea. And that's a result of a simulation with the different sampling design, systematic sampling, simple random sampling, stratification, local pivotal cube method and local cube method, and GRTS. And if the variance of the area of the Voronoi polygon is smaller, the quality of the spreading is better. And so you see that the best one is obviously systematic, but the local pivotal gives a very good result. That's a very, very simple method. The local cube method also, GRTS, that is very used, is working a little bit less good. And you see simple random sampling, that's relatively bad. Also stratification. With stratification you gain a lot. So that's the measurement of the quality of balancing. So the conclusion is that the sampling design should be conceived to using a prior information. So when you select a sample, first do a model of it is a repeated operation in public statistics. You do the same operation each quarter or each year. Try to model the previous step, and from the model you can derive the sampling design, and you have to follow the 3 big principles: overrepresentation, where the dispersion is large, you have to overrepresent, you have to increase the inclusion probabilities. Balancing, if you have auxiliary variables in your register that are correlated to your variable of interest, you can balance and you can reduce the variance. And if there is spatial sampling, if there is autocorrelation, you have to spread the sample. And if you apply these three principles, you will get a very accurate estimator directly by sampling. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. That's all. Thank you.